we really got to see the new 2022 regulations in action. Those new cars, better at overtaking, better at staying close. You're not overheating the front tires as much. And the evidence was on display. For me personally, you know, I was at the track. I was at Stowe. Really lucky because we saw Perez overtaken, the Hamilton overtaken, the big, you know, roar
amazing.
of the crowd as they went through there. It was awesome, and just the whole drama of the event. What were the headlines for you as a spectator for that race, and how do you think it's changed the Formula One season with its impact?
Yeah, well, obviously the biggest talking point from that is obviously Zhou's crash, and you know, like how it's just more about the drama about it. And I think it's not like, you know, the Romain Grosjean incident where, you know, obviously that was such a big dramatic crash, but we're all a bit hesitant to talk about it because, you know, he was very injured, and we just want to be a bit more respectful. And with this case here with Zhou, it's a bit weird because we can all be way more, you know, open about it, you know, sharing photos and stuff, because we know he got out of it absolutely fine. I mean, apart from like a bit being a bit shaken up and stuff, and the images look worse than himself, because he got out absolutely fine. And I think, like, obviously there's been some talk about, you know, if the safety is really there, but I also think it's such a benign, like such a like once in a lifetime kind of crash, that like all the safety elements that were in place fully worked. You know, like the roll hoop, for example, got grinded down, but it still did protect him. And that's what it was there for. Likewise with the roll, with the halo, the gravel started to slow him down. And then, you know, the tires and the catch fence, everything kind of worked. And the only thing that was a bit sketchy was the fact that the fence he got obviously caught between the fence and the tire wall. But then you got the thing of where, well, that in itself is a safety standpoint, because the fence needs to be allowed to flex. Otherwise, what could happen is that the actual fence could bend backwards, and then that could then go into the crowd, because obviously they have a massive like dugouts in concrete, so the metal sort of fence can go all the way down. That's how it's more secure. But then they can't put the tire wall, or they can't, like, you know, weld it together, because then if he was to still go down through that slot, and let's say, God forbid, it was to catch fire, you wouldn't be able to get him out of there because you can't move that tire wall. And that's the reason you need to have that extra room there. So all the safety features were in place, and like, motorsport is dangerous, and that's not me saying that's the answer. It'd be like, oh, it's all fine, but like, it's one of the worser things that we've seen. And obviously, I think at Silverstone as well, like we saw a couple of cases where the Halo device has saved lives. We saw it in the, you know, in the F2 race as well, where if that Halo device wasn't there, God forbid, what would have actually happened to the driver in the crash where he went over the sausage curb. But this is where we can look at things and redefine the more safety elements for it. For example, we don't need sausage curbs anymore. They're not needed. They are just literally going to be ramps now, so we just don't need them anymore. But aside from you know, Zhou, I think the main thing as well, it's like the weird strategy and the weird sort of like environment Ferrari have currently got at the moment, where like you got this weird inter-team battle with Leclerc and Sainz, where like all of us can kind of look at it objectively and be like, well, no, Leclerc kind of should be given the priority because he's performing better when the team work together. And Sainz's sort of victory, as much as good as it was, like, well, as it's so early in the season, team orders can't play a factor into it. However, for some reason, Leclerc, he was just following team orders and was told to stay out, and basically that lost him the race. But then also the tyre strategy when we had it back in Monaco, where Carlos Sainz just ignored the team orders, but then just because that was the better alternative, he then performed better. So it's kind of down to Ferrari now to really look into their strategy team and be like, right, what's going wrong here? Because we all objectively can see it as fans. We can see the Ferrari strategy is just not been working. It's not due to the drivers or anything. It's just to whatever decisions they're making, it's not working for the team. And Leclerc, he's Ferrari through and through, so he'll follow whatever the team say. And Sainz has been more of this sort of like rebellious type. Well, not rebellious, I don't want to say that that's his whole demeanor, but like just because that one scenario in Monaco, he took a gamble and was like, I'm going to ignore the team order as come in for the pits, and then benefited from that. And it was clear in this race as well, you know, like Sainz was holding up Leclerc for a good few laps. All of us were like, just let him through. And do the constant thing of like, if he can't go faster, at the end of the race swap positions so it's fair, and we're not so far in that we can have any team orders. But then even the demeanor of like Binotto coming over to Leclerc in Parc Ferme and kind of like with his finger waggling and like sort of telling him off and stuff, it's a bit like that for me. Like, it just didn't really it didn't settle right with me, because we've seen it with like Lewis Hamilton with Toto Wolff, where Toto Wolff has admitted, yeah, the car is not working, and as I said, yeah, this is a poo box basically on over the radio to Hamilton, and be like, sorry about this, yeah, well, it's not good, what's have you, it's fine. When with this scenario, it was so clear that the Ferrari strategy was wrong. And then Binotto comes over and he's kind of like, don't say that stuff over the team radio. It's a bit like, mate, own up to it a little bit. Like, yeah, of course it's not going to be like enthusiastic for your team to hear, but also it's not like a golden achievement award for just participating. Like, this is the one time you could potentially win a championship. If you're messing it up, then it's on you, and Leclerc's doing everything right. So I think it's just a bit weird. Obviously, it's more because like he's trying to protect their heritage and their image, because Ferrari fans through are like so like determined and so backing behind the team. But in that instance, it's just a bit like Ferrari are needing to sort things out. But I think those were the main big ones there. And obviously, Hamilton going through that amazing pass when the two of them were like sort of squabbling positions. Originally, I wasn't a fan of Verstappen, pushing off Schumacher, but also like I kind of had to be like, what, it's a bit more of just hard racing. If we're saying hard racing, then that's kind of what it is. Because then if we're all be like, oh, we want more battles, but then getting pushed off, it's like, well, you can't have both. And you know what, I'm a bit more of a fan of like, well, if he gets away with it, then you know what, Mick, you can do that to him in the next corner. You can push him off a little bit, like, and it's keeping it fair as long as you're not crashing into each other. But that's what we saw, with Leclerc and Perez, then Hamilton going through. That was such a great battle. But then if that was ever heavily policed, being like, okay, Perez, you're going to get a 5 or 10 second penalty. Leclerc, you went off. You had like you gained an advantage. Like, that's no, just let them race a bit more. It's all fine. But yeah, I think, as you said, best race of the season so far.
Absolutely, and it seems, I think it was said over the commentary, and it was also something that I believe Esteban Ocon had said at the Saudi Arabia race. But that driving these new cars, it feels a little bit more like watching a go-kart race, and that you feel like the cars have run so close together that even that little move where Hamilton was able to sweep through like Luffield, I guess, right, and get that double overtake done, it was just so satisfying to see that move get pulled off, and the fact that it actually was possible.
So good.
With karting being that foundation, do you feel like that it's a positive thing that we see Formula One getting a bit more like those kind of karting races?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's like that's what we've been wanting to see. Like, the cars have been like, I don't want to say it's been too powerful, because that's the whole point of is evolving the speed and evolving it. But the main thing we just wanted was closer racing. And I think the main headline this season for that has been the tires. Like, we're not seeing many, like, obviously we saw it in Silverstone, but before then everyone was struggling with the soft tires, and basically the mediums and the hard were like the new better compounds, always working from that. But I think because they're having an issue with the kind of the new sort of tire formats, and because of how the new aero is working, it means the cars are able to follow and battle a lot closer. I think it's down at turns I want to say 7 and 8, just outside the BRDC, the swooping right-hander before you go onto the old start-finish straights. We saw so many moves going around the outside there as well, because they were just able to follow a lot easier. Obviously, they're not going at breakneck speeds, but also like there's less dirty air coming from it. So I think the new 2022 cars are working. That's what was intended. It feels weird now looking back on like the previous iteration of the car, because now that looks so dated. We're also now new, like we're also used to like now the curvy way it looks. And I remember how when it first came out, when Formula One released it with like that weird chrome, awful looking livery, we were a bit like, okay, this is not gonna. This can't really settle it with it well. But it's the same with the halo. Like seeing a car now without the halo kind of looks a bit weird. But I think, yeah, the cars are showing that it's working really well, and it's just providing better racing, which is what we all want to see. We don't want a snooze fest or anything. We just want to see proper hard racing all the time, and then a bit of drama thrown in.